The galaxy had never seen a human like Elena Vasquez before, and perhaps it never would again. She stood at the center of the Grand Assembly Hall on Axiom Prime, the largest neutral station in known space, surrounded by delegates from 200 different species. Her silver hair was pulled back in a simple knot, and her dark eyes carried the weight of 8 billion souls back on Earth. She was not tall by human standards, and she was certainly not imposing compared to the massive reptilian Valkyrie or the towering insectoid Kryn. But when she spoke, the entire chamber fell silent. "We come not as conquerors," she said, her voice calm and steady through the universal translators. "We come as partners, as friends, as fellow travelers in this vast and beautiful cosmos." The Galactic Concord had existed for 15,000 years before humanity ever left Earth. When humans finally reached the stars in the year 2089, they found the universe already crowded with ancient civilizations. Some welcomed them, others viewed them with suspicion, and a few, like the Valkyrie Dominion, saw them as nothing more than insects to be crushed. Chancellor Vasquez had spent 30 years building bridges between humanity and the stars. She had ended the first contact wars through diplomacy when generals had failed with weapons. She had negotiated trade agreements that brought prosperity to Earth's colonies. She had earned the respect of species that had existed for millions of years. Today was supposed to be her greatest triumph. The Concord was voting on whether to grant humanity full membership status, which would give Earth a voice in galactic affairs equal to any other species. It was a moment humans had dreamed of for centuries. High in the observation gallery, the Valkyrie delegation watched with cold, unblinking eyes. Their leader, High Regent Sethrek, was a creature of scales and ancient cruelty. His species had ruled their sector of space for 12,000 years, and they had grown accustomed to being feared. They did not like this new species called humanity. They did not like how quickly humans spread across the stars. They did not like how other species seemed drawn to human warmth and creativity. Most of all, they did not like Elena Vasquez. She represented everything the Valkyrie despised. Cooperation instead of domination. Kindness instead of strength. Hope instead of fear. If humanity gained full membership, their influence would only grow. The Valkyrie had decided this could not be allowed. "The vote shall now commence," announced the Concord speaker, a floating crystalline being called a luminary. One by one, species cast their votes. The numbers climbed in humanity's favor. Vasquez allowed herself a small smile as she watched centuries of work come to fruition. Earth's delegation behind her was practically vibrating with excitement. She never saw the assassin. The Valkyrie had spent decades developing a personal cloaking device that could fool every sensor in the galaxy. The assassin had been in the chamber for hours, invisible and patient, waiting for this exact moment. The energy blade pierced Vasquez's chest from behind. Screams erupted throughout the chamber. Delegates scrambled in panic. Security forces rushed forward, but they were too late. The assassin deactivated his cloak deliberately, revealing the distinctive scales and ceremonial armor of a Valkyrie warrior. He wanted everyone to know who had done this. Chancellor Vasquez fell to her knees, crimson blood spreading across the white marble floor. The assassin was cut down seconds later by security fire, but the damage was done. The entire galaxy was watching through broadcast drones that carried the image to trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. Human delegates rushed to their fallen leader, tears streaming down their faces. Ambassador Chun cradled her head in his lap, pressing his hands against the wound, even though he knew it was hopeless. "Elena," he whispered, "stay with us. Please stay with us." She looked up at him with fading eyes, but there was no fear in them, only sadness. She reached up and touched his cheek with a blood-stained hand. "Tell them," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Tell them I still believe in peace." Do not let hate consume what we have built." Her hand fell. Her eyes closed. Chancellor Elena Vasquez, the woman who had united humanity and reached for the stars with open hands, was gone. For a long moment, the Grand Assembly Hall was completely silent. Then, a broadcast signal cut through every channel in the galaxy. High Regent Sethrak's face appeared on every screen, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. "People of the Concord," he declared, "let this be a lesson to all who forget their place. Humanity is a weed that grows too fast and spreads too far. Today, we have trimmed it back. Let this serve as a warning. The Valkyrie Dominion will not tolerate any challenge to the natural order. Humanity should return to their little blue world and be grateful we allow them to exist at all." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, beings of every species watched in horror and disbelief. The Valkyrie had just committed murder on sacred neutral ground. They had assassinated a diplomat during a peace summit. They had violated laws that had held for 15,000 years. On Earth, the news arrived like a thunderbolt. People stopped in the streets to stare at public screens. Families gathered around home displays in shocked silence. In every city on every continent, humans watched their beloved Chancellor die, watched her final words, watched the Valkyrie mock their grief. Something changed in that moment. Something ancient and terrible stirred in the human soul. Other species had always found humans confusing. They were so friendly, so creative, so eager to cooperate. They made art and music. They laughed and cried easily. They formed attachments to other species with remarkable speed. Many in the Concord had dismissed them as soft, as weak, as too emotional to ever be taken seriously. They had forgotten something important. They had forgotten that this friendly, creative species had spent most of its history at war with itself. They had forgotten that humans had climbed to the top of their food chain not through strength or speed, but through relentless, terrifying persistence. They had forgotten that the same species that wrote poetry and painted sunsets had also invented nuclear weapons and used them on their own kind. The Valkyrie had just reminded humanity of something it had tried very hard to forget. Humans could be kind. Humans could be generous. Humans could be the best friends the galaxy had ever known. But they could also be something else entirely. In the hours after the assassination, Earth went quiet. Communication channels shut down. Diplomatic missions recalled their staff. Trade ships returned to port. The human presence in the galaxy seemed to simply vanish. The Concord sent messages asking for dialogue. The Valkyrie sent messages gloating about their victory. No one answered. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what would emerge from humanity's silence. They would not have to wait long, and when the answer came, the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Tobias Kane had been retired for 15 years when the message came. He lived alone on a small farm in northern Canada, surrounded by wheat fields and silence. He had commanded fleets once. He had won battles that secured humanity's place among the stars. He had watched too many young men and women die under his orders. When the wars ended, he had put away his uniform and promised himself he would never wear it again. He was standing on his porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold, when his old military communicator buzzed for the first time in over a decade. He stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Kane," he said, his voice rough from disuse. "Admiral, this is Secretary General Morrison. I assume you have seen the news?" Kane had seen it. Everyone on Earth had seen it. He had watched Chancellor Vasquez die on that alien marble floor, and something cold had settled in his chest. "I saw it," he replied. "Then you know why I'm calling. We need you, Tobias. Earth needs you. Humanity needs you." Kane closed his eyes. He thought about his quiet farm, his peaceful life, the graves of fallen soldiers that haunted his dreams. He thought about the promise he had made to himself. Then he thought about Elena Vasquez, a woman he had known for 40 years, a woman who had believed in peace even as she bled out on alien stone. "Where do you need me?" he asked. 3 days later, Kane stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned battleship Retribution, staring out at a sight that made his old heart race. Ships stretched across the void as far as sensors could detect. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, frigates, and countless smaller vessels formed a wall of steel and fury that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had come from everywhere. The United Earth Navy had mobilized every vessel in its fleet. Corporate security forces from the outer colonies had volunteered their private armadas. Colony militias had pooled their resources and sent everything that could fly and fight. Old enemies who had spent decades in bitter rivalry now flew in formation together. Even the pirates and smugglers had come, their ragged ships taking position alongside gleaming military cruisers. "Admiral on deck," someone announced, and every officer on the bridge snapped to attention. Kane waved them back to their stations. He walked slowly to the central command chair and looked at the tactical display showing the assembled fleet. "How many?" he asked quietly. 12,000 combat-capable vessels, sir," his executive officer reported. "Another 8,000 support ships. We are still receiving arrivals from the outer colonies. 20,000 ships." It was more than humanity had ever gathered in one place. It was more than most species could field from their entire civilization. And still they came. Down on Earth, the transformation was even more remarkable. Factories that had been producing consumer goods switched overnight to weapons manufacturing. Universities emptied as scientists abandoned their research to work on military projects. Young people lined up at recruitment centers in numbers not seen since the darkest days of the First Contact Wars. In secret laboratories, researchers pulled out forbidden research that had been locked away for generations. They built weapons that the Galactic Concord had banned centuries ago, relativistic kill vehicles that could crack planets, nanoswarms that could devour entire fleets, gravity bombs that could tear holes in the fabric of space itself. The Concord had made humanity promise never to build such things. Humanity had kept that promise in good faith. Now all promises were void. Chancellor Vasquez had been the voice of reason, the hand extended in friendship, the belief that cooperation was better than conflict. With her death, that voice fell silent. What remained was something older, something darker, something that humanity had tried very hard to evolve beyond. Secretary General Morrison addressed the United Earth Assembly in an emergency session. The chamber was packed with representatives from every nation and colony, their faces grim and determined. The Velkari believe they can murder our leaders and face no consequences, Morrison said, his voice echoing through the hall. They believe we are weak. They believe we will mourn and move on. They believe wrong. The assembly erupted in thunderous applause. "We did not ask for this war," Morrison continued. "Chancellor Vasquez dedicated her life to peace. She believed in diplomacy, in cooperation, in the better angels of our nature. And they killed her for it. They killed her and laughed. They killed her and told us to be grateful they let us exist." His fist slammed down on the podium. "No more. We will show the Velkari what humanity truly is. We will show the entire galaxy that human lives are not cheap. We will teach them a lesson they will remember for the next 15,000 years." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in human history, every nation, every colony, every faction united behind a single cause. There were no dissenting voices, no calls for restraint, no pleas for negotiation. Elena Vasquez had asked them not to let hate consume what they had built. But Elena Vasquez was dead, and the living demanded justice. Meanwhile, the Galactic Concord grew increasingly alarmed. Human communication channels had been silent for 2 weeks. Envoys sent to Earth simply vanished into the communications blackout. Rumors began to spread through the Concord about what humanity was building, about the weapons they were developing, about the fleet they were assembling. Finally, a Concord delegation managed to reach Earth and demand an audience. They were granted one. Ambassador Chun, his eyes still red from weeks of mourning, met them in a bare conference room. He listened politely as they demanded that humanity stand down, that they accept Concord arbitration, that they allow the proper legal channels to address the assassination. When they finished, Chun stood and straightened his jacket. "You had 200 years to accept humanity as equals," he said quietly. "You had 200 years to stand with us against those who wished us harm. You had 200 years to prove that your Concord was more than empty words and ancient politics." He walked to the door and paused. "Elena Vasquez believed in your justice. She died believing in it. We do not share her faith. You may return to your masters and tell them this. Humanity has been patient. Humanity has been kind. Humanity has played by your rules and asked only for fairness in return. That time is over. Now we take what we are owed, and we take it in blood." The delegation returned to the Concord, pale and shaking. "What did they say?" the speaker asked. "They said nothing," the lead envoy whispered. "But I saw their eyes, and I saw their fleet, and I tell you truly, the humans are not preparing for war. Then what are they preparing for?" The envoy swallowed hard. "Extinction. They are preparing to wipe the Valkyrie from the face of the galaxy, and I do not think anything in the universe can stop them." The Valkyrie Dominion had ruled its corner of the galaxy for 12,000 years, and in all that time, no enemy had ever reached their core systems. Their empire spanned 90 star systems. They commanded 4,000 warships crewed by the finest warriors their species had ever produced. Their military academies taught tactics that had been refined over countless millennia. They had crushed rebellions, conquered rival species, and expanded their borders through blood and fire. They feared nothing. When reports began arriving about the human fleet mobilization, High Regent Sethrak dismissed them with a wave of his clawed hand. "Let them come," he declared to his war council. "We will teach these mammals the price of challenging their betters. Our outer colonies alone can crush whatever pitiful force they manage to assemble." His generals agreed enthusiastically. Surely the humans were bluffing. Surely they would see reason and back down. Surely they understood that challenging the Valkyrie meant certain destruction. They were still confident when the first human ships appeared in Valkyrie space. The outer colony of Desser 7 was the first to fall. It happened so fast that the garrison barely had time to send a distress signal. One moment, the skies were clear. The next, human ships filled the void like a swarm of angry insects. They did not negotiate. They did not demand surrender. They simply opened fire. Desser 7's defense fleet numbered 60 ships, considered more than enough to handle any pirate raid or minor incursion. The human force numbered over 1,000. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, every Valkyrie ship had been reduced to floating debris. The colony's orbital defense platforms were slag. The military installations on the surface had been surgically destroyed by precision, strikes that left civilian areas untouched. Then the human commander broadcast a single message to the terrified colonists below. "We're not here for you. We are here for your masters. Stay in your homes and you will not be harmed. Resist and you will share their fate." The colonists did not resist. But Desser 7 was not alone. Across 17 different star systems, human fleets struck simultaneously. They appeared from nowhere, using jump technology that the Valkyrie had never seen before. Their attacks were coordinated with impossible precision, hitting dozens of targets at the exact same moment across light years of space. The outer colonies fell in 6 hours. 6 hours. Territories that the Valkyrie had held for thousands of years were conquered, before most citizens on the homeworld even knew a war had begun. Regent Sethrak received the reports in his throne room, his scales turning pale with each new message. Lesser 7, gone. Corinth Station, destroyed. The Merchant Nebula territories, overrun. The Fortress of Endless Night, the most heavily defended military installation in the outer colonies, reduced to atoms by weapons that sensors could not even identify. How is this possible? He demanded. Where did they get such weapons? How did they move so fast? His generals had no answers. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the tactical display update with each new victory. His face was stone, his eyes cold. He took no pleasure in this. He had seen too much death in his life to enjoy seeing more. But some things had to be done. Signal from the Concorde, Admiral, his communications officer reported. They are demanding we cease hostilities immediately. Ignore them, Kane replied. Sir, they are threatening sanctions, economic isolation, military intervention. Kane almost smiled. Let them come. But first, open the channel to the entire galaxy. I want every species in the Concorde to hear what I have to say. The broadcast went out on every frequency, reaching trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. Kane's weathered face appeared on screens in Concorde halls, in alien homes, in ships drifting through the void. People of the galaxy, he began, I am Admiral Tobias Kane of the United Earth Navy. 3 weeks ago, the Valkyrie Dominion murdered our Chancellor on sacred neutral ground. They laughed and called us weeds to be trimmed. They told us to be grateful for our existence. His voice hardened. We are not here for territory. We are not here for resources. We are not here for power or glory or conquest. We are here because the Valkyrie taught the galaxy that human lives are cheap. We are here to teach a different lesson. He leaned forward, his eyes burning with cold fire. To the Valkyrie, I say this. Every world you hold, we can take. Every ship you command, we can destroy. Every stronghold you hide behind, we can crack. You wanted to show the galaxy what happens when humanity is challenged. You will get your wish. Before this is over, the galaxy will know exactly what humanity is capable of, and they will never forget. The broadcast ended. In the Concorde halls, diplomats sat in stunned silence. No species had ever spoken to the Valkyrie that way. No species had ever dared. The Valkyrie War Council gathered in emergency session. For the first time in millennia, fear crept into their discussions. They had expected the humans to strike at 1 or 2 targets to make a show of force before retreating to negotiate. Instead, the humans had attacked everywhere at once with overwhelming force and impossible technology. We must commit the home fleet, one general argued. We must crush them before they advance further. The home fleet cannot leave Velkar Prime undefended, another countered. What if this is a feint? It is not a feint, a third general said quietly. Look at the recordings from Lesser 7, from Corinth, from the fortress. They are not testing us. They are not sending a message. They are coming for us, all of them, with everything they have. Regent Sethrak finally spoke, his voice carrying an edge of uncertainty that his generals had never heard before. Then we will meet them with everything we have. The Valkyrie Dominion has stood for 12,000 years. We have crushed every enemy that dared challenge us. These humans are nothing but upstart mammals from a backwater world. We will destroy them, and then we will burn their precious earth to ashes. His words echoed through the chamber, but they sounded hollow even to his own ears. Far across the void, the human fleet continued its advance, and with each passing hour, it drew closer to the heart of the Dominion. The Tempest had made landfall, and there was no force in the galaxy that could stop it now. The human fleet arrived at Velkar Prime 3 weeks after the war began, and the sight of it struck terror into the hearts of every Velkari who looked upon it. 8,000 warships hung in the void like a wall of steel and vengeance. Behind them, supply vessels and carrier ships stretched back toward the stars, a line of destruction that seemed to go on forever. The fleet had traveled a distance that should have taken 3 months in just 21 days, using jump technology that humanity had invented during the war itself. I-Regent Sethrak stood in his war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching enemy. His scales had lost their healthy sheen. His eyes were sunken with exhaustion and fear. In 3 weeks, the humans had conquered more Velkari territory than any enemy in 12,000 years. "How many ships do we have?" he demanded. 800 in the home fleet, High Regent. Another 300 can be recalled from the inner colonies within 2 days. And our orbital defenses? 12 fortress stations, each armed with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Planetary shields at full power. Ground-based weapons platforms covering every major city. Sethrak nodded slowly. Surely this would be enough. Velkar Prime was the most heavily defended world in Velkari space. No enemy had ever breached its defenses. No enemy had ever even tried. He activated the broadcast system and addressed his people. His image appeared on every screen on the planet, his voice carrying to billions of Velkari citizens. "My people," he declared, "the human savages have come to our door. They believe they can threaten the heart of our great dominion. They believe wrong. Our ancestors watch over us from the eternal void. Our gods have blessed our species with dominion over the stars. These mammals will break against our defenses like waves against rock. Today, we will teach them the true meaning of Velkari power." Across the planet, citizens cheered. They gathered in public squares and chanted prayers to their ancient gods. They believed their High Regent. They believed in their defenses. They believed that nothing could touch their sacred homeworld. Admiral Kane watched the Velkari fleet form a defensive formation around their planet. He studied the fortress stations, the shield generators, the weapons platforms. He saw the strength of their defenses, and he felt nothing but cold determination. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the Concord is broadcasting another demand for ceasefire. They are threatening to intervene directly." Kane did not even look up from the display. The Concord had their chance to act. They chose neutrality when one of their own was murdered on neutral ground. Their words mean nothing now. He straightened and addressed his fleet commanders through the communication network. "All ships, this is Admiral Kane. We have traveled far and fought hard to reach this moment. Today we stand before the heart of the Velkari Dominion, the species that murdered our Chancellor and laughed at our grief. They believe their defenses will protect them. They believe their gods will save them. They believe wrong." His voice hardened. "We are not here to conquer this world. We are here to teach a lesson. Target their orbital temples. Target their ancestor vaults. Target their gene banks and their monuments and every symbol of their arrogance. Leave their civilians in peace, but leave their pride in ruins. Show them what it means to take something precious from humanity." The battle began. Human ships surged forward in coordinated waves, their weapons blazing. Velkari fortress stations opened fire with everything they had, filling space with deadly energy beams and explosive projectiles. For a few minutes, it seemed like the defenses might hold. Then the humans deployed their forbidden weapons. Gravity bombs tore holes in space itself, swallowing fortress stations whole. Nanoswarms devoured defensive platforms from the inside out. Relativistic kill vehicles, moving at fractions of the speed of light, punched through shields that had withstood millennia of warfare. One by one, the fortress stations fell. The Valkyrie fleet fought bravely, their warriors willing to die for their homeworld. But bravery was not enough against overwhelming firepower and impossible technology. Within hours, the orbital defenses were gone. High Regent Sethrak watched in horror as human ships took position above his world. He waited for the bombardment that would reduce his cities to ash, the extinction strike that he would have ordered if the positions were reversed. It never came. Instead, the humans targeted something far more devastating. The orbital temples of the ancestors had floated above Velkar Prime for 10,000 years, housing the preserved remains of every high regent and noble lord who had ever ruled. They were the most sacred sites in Velkar civilization, more precious than any city or military installation. Human weapons reduced them to dust. The eternal gene banks contained genetic material from the founding bloodlines of the Valkyrie species, the biological legacy of their greatest heroes and leaders, preserved for future cloning and resurrection. They had survived wars, disasters, and the passage of millennia. Human weapons erased them from existence. The Monument of First Conquest, a massive orbital structure commemorating the Valkyrie's first victory over another species 12,000 years ago, had been a symbol of their power and superiority for generations beyond counting. Human weapons tore it apart piece by piece while the entire planet watched. Sethrak fell to his knees as he watched his civilization's most treasured symbols destroyed. His generals wept openly. Across the planet, billions of Valkyrie citizens stared at the sky in disbelief as everything they held sacred was systematically annihilated. Then the human ground forces landed. They did not come to conquer or occupy. A single shuttle descended to the steps of the Grand Basilica, the most holy building on Velkar Prime. A squad of human soldiers emerged, their weapons ready but not raised. They carried a single item, Chancellor Elena Vasquez's blood-stained diplomatic sash, the same one she had worn when she died. They placed it carefully on the sacred steps, turned, and departed without a word. The message was clear to every Valkyrie who witnessed it. You took what we loved. Now you understand loss. High Regent Sethrak broadcast his surrender before the shuttle reached orbit. His voice was broken, his pride shattered, his ancient bloodline disgraced. We submit, he said simply. We ask only for mercy. Admiral Kane's response was brief. Mercy is for those who deserve it. You will receive justice instead. The war was not over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. The greatest dominion in the quadrant had been brought to its knees in less than a month, and the galaxy would never forget the species that had done it. The war lasted 47 days from the first shot to the final surrender. And in those 47 days, humanity rewrote the history of the galaxy. The Valkyrie Dominion, an empire that had stood for 12,000 years and terrorized countless species, ceased to exist. Their military was destroyed. Their leaders were captured. Their symbols of power were ash drifting through the void. What had once been the most feared civilization in the quadrant was reduced to a collection of broken worlds and broken pride. High Regent Sethrak the Undying was brought before a tribunal of species that his people had conquered and oppressed over the millennia. The trial lasted 3 days. The verdict was never in doubt. His own people, ashamed and furious at what he had brought upon them, carried out the execution themselves. His final words were a warning that no one heeded. You have no idea what you have unleashed. But he was wrong. The galaxy was beginning to understand exactly what humanity was. In the aftermath of the war, the Galactic Concord scrambled to address the new reality. Diplomats who had once dismissed humans as minor players now spoke of them in hushed, nervous tones. Military strategists who had mocked human technology now studied the recordings of the Tempest War with growing horror. The humans had invented new weapons during the war. They had created new forms of faster-than-light travel. They had coordinated attacks across impossible distances with perfect precision. And they had done all of this in just a few weeks. What could they do if given months? Years? Decades? The Concord offered humanity a permanent seat on the High Council, the ruling body of galactic civilization. It was the highest honor any species could receive, an acknowledgement of their power and importance. Chancellor David Okonkwo stood before the assembled Concord to deliver humanity's response. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle voice, nothing like the fierce Admiral Kane or the legendary warriors who had torn through the Valkyrie Dominion. He had been Elena Vasquez's closest advisor, her chosen successor, and he carried her legacy with quiet dignity. "We thank the Concord for this offer," he said, his voice echoing through the vast assembly hall. "But we must respectfully decline." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the chamber. Decline? After demonstrating such overwhelming power, why would humanity refuse the chance to rule? Okonkwo raised his hand for silence. 47 days ago, we were a peaceful species seeking nothing more than equality and friendship. We built art and music. We explored the stars with wonder and curiosity. We reached out to other species with open hands and open hearts. His expression grew solemn. Then you showed us what the galaxy truly thinks of peace. You showed us that friendship is weakness, that kindness is foolishness, that the only language the universe respects is violence. And we proved that we speak that language better than anyone. He paused, letting his words sink in. We did not want this war. Chancellor Vasquez dedicated her life to building bridges, and she died still believing in peace. We fought not for conquest or glory, but because you left us no choice. You taught us that we must be feared to be respected, and we have learned that lesson well. His voice softened. But we do not want to become what we have destroyed. We do not want to rule the galaxy through fear. We do not want to spend eternity looking over our shoulders, waiting for the next species to challenge our power. Elena Vasquez dreamed of a universe where all species could live as equals, and though she is gone, her dream survives. He looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes of 100 different species. So we will not take your council seat. We will not claim Valkyrie territory. We will not demand tribute or submission. Instead, we will return to our borders and rebuild. We will continue to create art and music and reach for the stars with wonder. We will extend our hands in friendship to any species willing to take them. His voice grew firm. But let this war serve as a reminder. Humanity asks for peace. We do not beg for it. And if peace is taken from us, we will take everything else from you. We have proven that we can destroy empires in weeks. Remember that the next time you consider whether human lives are cheap. He bowed slightly. Thank you for your time. May the stars guide you wisely. With that, Chancellor Okonkwo turned and walked from the chamber, leaving 200 species in stunned silence. In the years that followed, humanity kept its word. The fleet was reduced. The forbidden weapons were dismantled. The war machine that had conquered the Valkyrie was quietly put away, though never forgotten. Humans returned to their colonies and their lives, to their art and their music and their endless curiosity about the universe. But things were different now. Other species treated humans with a respect they had never shown before. Trade agreements that had been denied for centuries were suddenly approved. Diplomatic overtures that had been ignored were now answered within hours. Species that had once looked down on humanity now sought their friendship eagerly. And in quiet moments, in alien bars and diplomatic receptions and military academies across the galaxy, Beings of every species told stories about the Tempest War. They spoke of Admiral Kane, the old soldier who had led humanity's vengeance with cold efficiency. They spoke of the human scientists who had invented impossible weapons in mere weeks. They spoke of the soldiers who had placed Chancellor Vasquez's blood-stained sash on the steps of the Grand Basilica without speaking a word. And they spoke of the lesson that the war had taught. The Valkyrie had believed that violence was the only true power. They had believed that other species were simply prey to be dominated. They had believed that their ancient civilization would last forever. They had been wrong about everything. Humanity had shown that true strength was not just the capacity for destruction, but the wisdom to know when to stop. They had proven that they could be the most terrifying force the galaxy had ever seen. And then they had chosen to be something else instead. And that choice, more than any weapon or fleet or victory, was what made the galaxy truly fear and respect them. Generations later, alien children would still hear the stories. They would learn about the humans, the strange species from a small blue world who made beautiful music and terrible war in equal measure. They would learn about Chancellor Vasquez, who died believing in peace, and Chancellor Okonkwo, who honored her memory by refusing to become a conqueror. And they would learn the saying that had spread through every corner of galactic civilization, whispered by diplomats and generals and ordinary citizens alike: never mistake human kindness for human weakness. They are not the same thing. The stars remembered, and they would never forget.